My name is Henry Camp. I'm the owner of Shipper Solutions here. We're just hosting Rami. I've got an idea in my head of what I'm trying to do here by doing so. And the idea is that places like Florida, Tennessee, Texas don't have state taxes. So they provide massive incentives for companies to move in and to bring talent in. If Kentucky doesn't want to do that, of course, there's a disadvantage of doing that you don't get the revenue. You can't do the services that the state might otherwise need to do. On the other hand, if you bring in innovation, then you've got a chance for an explosion in your community that does good things for everybody and pays its own taxes and then helps the community in that way too. So I think it's a good way for business and government to both win. That's my introduction. Rami Goldratt is my friend and longtime friend. He came over to see me the first time when his first son was born and 3 weeks old. And his father said, "You will come see this guy in Kentucky." He must have been totally depressed. But we've got to be great friends. And anyway, he's a
years to remember.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to have him here. And he's going to talk about something new, a breakthrough, a process for innovation, something that you can learn, something that you can deploy in your own company. And he'll talk to you in the end. We're going to have a workshop, we hope, later in the summer that you can take advantage of if you want to do this in your own company or if you know someone who wants to do it who's not here today. Rami?
Thank you very much. So, good morning, everybody. And thank you very much for coming so early to hear me out. For me, it's not early at all because I came from Israel, so I'm just midday here. So before we start and talk about business innovation, what does it mean to increase the chances of success coming up with new products or new business models? And for those of you who maybe are less aware with the theory of constraints, TLC, my father's work, I'll give 2 minutes introduction about the theory, and then we'll zoom in on the subject that you came to hear today. Would that be okay with everybody? Fantastic. So let's go back. So first of all, you will hear me refer to my father throughout this presentation. I'm Jewish, and the Jewish culture, it's not, it's considered great disrespect to call your parents by their name. So I cannot call him by his name. I can only call him father. So my father created this body of knowledge called the theory of constraints, TLC. He wrote a very famous book, which is he wrote it in the mid-80s, but until today, it's one of the top 5 bestsellers in history of management books, okay, worldwide. I assume many of you have read the book, The Goal, and if not, I encourage you to read it. Why not? Let me get some royalties. It's nice to have. So, as I mentioned, let me tell you 2 minutes a little bit about the theory of constraints. What is it all about? So, what we believe is that if you look at the system as a whole, the system could be your company, organization, society, and you really understand the cause and effect that governs the flow of or the performance of the system, you will always be able to pinpoint relatively few constraints that governs the flow. And if you look at production line, these can be called bottlenecks, okay? What does it mean govern the flow, govern the performance? It means that if you manage these points better, then the entire system will produce more goal units, more throughput. And if you don't manage them well, the entire system will produce much less. They really dictate your ability to achieve more of your goal. Now, on the surface level, we see many, many obstacles that stand in our way to achieve our goal. But not each one of these obstacles is a constraint. Because most of these obstacles, even if you remove them, it doesn't mean that you achieve more of your goal. You still need to do many other things. The constraint really dictates your ability to achieve the goal. That's why there are not many constraints. There are very few constraints. Okay, makes sense? And therefore, if you want to really exploit your management attention and utilize it in the best way possible, then even though everybody are in favor of continuous improvement and culture of improvement, and of course, even the subtitle of the book, The Goal, that my father wrote, is Process of Ongoing Improvement. You need to really be careful where you focus your improvement efforts. Because if you are not addressing the constraints, you may be feeling very busy and very proud, but at the end of the day, the improvement efforts will not translate to more goal units of the entire system. Okay, make sense, everybody? Now, the constraints could be in various aspects of the system. The constraints could be in the ability of the company to deliver more value. In other words, in the operations of your business. The constraint could be on the demand side, in your ability of the company, of the business to generate more demand. We call it market constraint. Okay. Now, over the years, applying the theory of constraints with many businesses worldwide, we've created robust solutions, applications to deal with constraints wherever they could be. So if the constraints are on the operations side, and if your operations is in production, we have a solution for that. And if it's in project environment or supply chain or retail or engineering, there are already applications of the theory of constraints that can guide you how to find the constraint, how to manage it better, and what not to do as well. Same goes for dealing with constraints on the sales force management or on getting more demand. Okay, how do you come up with better value propositions? Now, obviously, we didn't came here today to hear an overview of TLC, but to hear what TLC can offer on a very specific but very important subject, which is business innovation. Okay, is there a process that can help us come up with breakthrough products, with breakthrough value propositions in the marketplace? Why do I say breakthrough? Because when we talk about innovation, there is a big difference between innovation and improvement, and we will talk about it later. Innovation is risky. Most innovations fail. It costs a lot of money and resources. So if we do try to create an innovation, something very powerful, let's make sure that we are aiming to a breakthrough value proposition, something that can really increase demand and not just another features to price modification. Make sense, everybody? What do we, when we talk about coming up with breakthrough products, what do we mean? Let's talk a little bit about this process of innovation. First of all, there is this, everybody talk about innovation as being disruptive, as coming up with something new, but we don't promote it so much. In other words, what we're trying to say is that innovation is not done to make something new. That's not the objective. Actually, if you just try to make something new and disruptive, most likely you will come up with a very nice plan on paper and nothing will be done in reality because it's too disruptive. You're not trying to make something new for the sake of being new. We're trying to make innovation for one objective, talking with companies, right? What is the objective? To generate much more business. Make sense, everybody? That's the objective. Now, most of you, I assume, are coming from established companies that already have customers, already have markets, have assets. You're not startups that just started. And therefore, if our objective is to substantially increase business and not just to make something new, we need to take into account all these assets and constraints that we have. Our innovation process is not done in a vacuum. It's done in a context of our business. We many times actually promote trying to make the minimum innovation that will make the biggest impact, because we want innovation to be practical. Something that will be very nice in plan, but also can be done in reality, okay? Despite all the short-term pressure and all the other worries that we have when we run our businesses. Make sense to you? Remember it. You will see throughout my presentation and when we talk about the process, how careful we are not just to do something very, very big and disruptive, even if it can work, but to try to break it down, try to make it practical. Okay, so we can do it tomorrow. We can really work and make something big. There's also a notion that if I need really breakthrough innovation, there's only so much we can do. If we could have done it, we would already do it. So we need to wait for Steve Jobs or Steve Jobs' spirit to come to us and show us the light. But in our experience working again with many companies around the world, we actually see that coming up with good ideas is never the constraint. I've never come across a company that we speak with the people there and there are no good ideas to generate more demand. I never saw it. Ideas are never the constraint, never the challenge. What is the challenge? The challenge is, okay, there are many ideas, which one should we focus on? Because if we try to work on many things, nothing will happen. And how do we reach a consensus among all the stakeholders where to focus our innovation? It's very difficult. And of course, how do we make sure as we develop these ideas and apply it in reality, how do we make sure that we're not just adding one compromise after the other, and at the end of the day, we have a great idea that can make a big wow, but we end up with some small modification of one of our products. Make sense? And that's the process I'm going to show you today. That's really how it guides us. How to look for the right ideas, how to reach consensus, how to develop it without compromising the value, how to make it practical. Now, when I talk about breakthrough products, it could be on the product level, it could also be on the service level. Okay, maybe you need to make some changes in the way you service the customers and you make the breakthrough, meaning generate much more business, or in the business model, or in your offering, okay, or a combination of all of these, okay? Those of you who have read the book, The Goal, probably noticed that there is a very fundamental process, which is the most fundamental process of TOC, of theory of constraints, which is called the 5 focusing steps. It starts with identifying the system constraint, then understanding how do we get the most out of it? How do we exploit it? How do we align the entire system to enable us to get the most out of our constraint? Then, and only as the 4th step, we think, how do we add more capacity? First, let's get the maximum from what we have, then we'll invest in adding more capacity. And the last step, of course, is beware of inertia. The constraint can move and you need to be ready. Don't think your constraint will always remain where it is. Why do I share this process? Because the same thing we apply when we talk about innovation. Remember, we want to make it practical. We want to look for the minimum innovation that will make the biggest impact. So we will start by looking for ways to exploit what you have. Your current market, your current customers, your current product. Can we get much more? By making a meaningful change, obviously. In parallel, we may come up with ideas to make it even a bigger jump that will require some new technologies or new markets. Fair enough, and we can work on it in parallel. But to make it practical, let's start here. Make sense, everybody? Very good. And you will see how we do it, and I'll give you a lot of examples around it. If I look at the overall process of innovation, I want to break another myth before we continue. And the myth is that innovation is ideation. It's all about coming up with an idea. I already told you that ideas are never the constraint. But more than that, when I look at the real constraints, coming up with a good idea is just the first step of the innovation journey. Agreeing on the right idea, reaching the consensus is just the first step. Even after you have a great idea in the product, in the service, in the business model, whatever, that will generate a lot of demand, there is still a question, how do you translate value, the value you bring customers, how do you translate value to business? And many innovations, that's where they fail. Okay, you want a proof? Just think how many innovations you know were not the first attempts to launch such a new product in the market. We're not the first. The first attempts failed completely. Only the 3rd, the 4th company that tried to do it reached success. Why? Because they knew how to educate the market, to appreciate the new value, how to charge for it in the right way, how to build a business around it. Meaning, there is an important step for the innovation process, which is how to design the right business model. Okay, we will talk a little bit about it today. The next step, which is as important, and that's also where many innovations fail, is the execution plan, the way we plan the development project of our innovation. Why do I stress it so much? I'm sure all of you that are engaged in doing projects, know that one of the major characteristics of a project is high level of uncertainty. Agree? That's what is the difference between a project and a production? The project is something that involves a lot of new stuff, right? It's not repetitive like we're doing. It's not that in production everything is certain. Of course not. There is variability, but in project environment, it's much more. But when we talk about innovation, the level of uncertainty is even much greater than normal project environments. Why? Because we're doing something really for the first time. And a lot of us, it's like a research project. And a lot of the assumptions that we make when we have designed the plan will turn invalid. We'll see that it's not exactly the way we thought. And therefore, we need to run the innovation process, the way we develop it in reality and apply it, we need to manage it in a way that will allow us to do a lot of iterations, to learn quickly from reality, what works, what not, and to change it. Make sense, everybody? For example, if you invest a lot of time, money, and effort in doing something, in creating this new technology, for example, and only then you find out that it doesn't work as you thought it will work, or that, for example, customers do not appreciate as much as you thought. The reasonable thing to do will say, okay, let me go back to the drawing board and restart, right? Everybody? That's what logic says to do. But you know what happens in reality? People never go back. They don't redo it and reinvest. What do? They also don't drop the idea, because they invested a lot. What do? They convince themselves that it can still work, just not to lose the investment they have done. Everybody, make sense to you? Okay? So we need to avoid these kind of traps and manage it in a different way. Now, I'm running a fairly large consultancy business, hundreds of consultants working seriously around the world. Normally, when we go and talk to a specific company, we want to first understand where is the real constraint in their innovations. Is it in the coming up with ideas? Is it in the business models? Is it in the way they execute it, develop it? Okay, that's where we're looking and that's where we'll focus. But here, because you came to learn about the entire process, I'll start A to Z, okay? I'll teach you the entire thing. So let's start. I'll start with a very, very important quote by Marcel Proust, who said, the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. That's very important, again, because we want to make innovation practical. Minimum innovation that make the biggest impact. Let's start by looking at the reality we already know, the markets we already serve, the customers we are already engaged, the products we already have. But see if we can look at it from a different perspective, maybe ask different questions that can trigger wow ideas, but to generate much more demand. Okay? That's our starting point. And that's where we see most powerful innovations that are practical. That's where they start. Let me give you an example. This is a company we work with, a very successful company. They make car wash equipment, the type that is typically installed they operate in Europe. It's typically installed in gas stations, okay? And if you want to have convenience wash, just quickly wash your car, you take it through this device and you get a quick clean. You know this device, okay? If you want to have the most superior quality wash, you go to a dedicated facility. This is more for convenience. Now, this company I told you is very successful. Actually, they told us that they have 80% of the market. 80% of the gas station that bought such an equipment bought it from them. Okay, so they're quite successful. This success also became their constraint. My father used to call it, you're like a whale in an aquarium, because now you're so big, your performance will really be dictated by the size of the aquarium, if it's growing or shrinking, not by your own performance. Okay, because there are not too many new gas stations that are added in Europe. And it's very difficult in their business to export, to go into new markets across the ocean. You with me so far? And that was exactly their challenge. They told us their sales are stagnating for several years because they now became very dependent on the replacement cycle of their current customers. In other words, how long gas stations are waiting to buy a new machine instead of the one they have. You with me, everybody? What are you doing about it? We asked, and they said, well, we are engineers. It's a German company. You know, our engineers are working on the next best wash quality equipment. They showed us very long list of projects and improvements that they're doing to the devices, putting special chemicals to clean the tires, and maybe some brushes to clean even the last Fliegele, it's called in German, the last fly from the window, and put maybe a vacuum cleaner inside the very long list. We said, okay, that seems reasonable. Let's understand what they're doing. What is the question that they're trying to answer? They're trying to, given what I told you so far, they're trying to answer the question, how do I convince gas station to replace the equipment they have with the new equipment? Make sense, everybody? That's the question they are asking. So now let's put all of our engineers' efforts to come up with the next best quality wash machine. What's the problem? It sounds perfect. Makes sense. The problem, they said, is that actually they're not very confident that even if they can make such a good machine, that the gas stations will rush to replace what they have. Why? We asked. And they said, well, we're not very happy about, the gas stations are not very happy about the returns that they are making from these devices. You see, at the beginning, when you install the machine, many cars are using it, but then over time, less and less cars are using it. They don't make the returns they expected. So now if you come with a new machine, we are not sure that they will say, okay, let me buy again another machine. Make sense, everybody? Now, what question would you ask? Put yourself in my shoes. You're the consultant, okay? What question would you ask, given what I told you? Okay, now we can be more specific. What did they tell you? They told you that after time, less and less cars are using it, right? So how do you make it more important? What do you need to know? Why, or let's start with how. How do I make more cars use the machine? You with me? How many cars are using the machine? That's the first question we asked. From the number of cars that goes into the gas station, how many are actually using it? They said below 5%, about 3%, they told us. It can't be that only 3% of the car owners care about convenience wash, right? Even if you double the number of cars, you're still in the 10%. There's so much room to grow. Everybody with me? So now my question is, how do I get more cars to use the machine? Notice a very different question than how do I convince gas stations to replace the machine they have? It's a very different question. Okay, everybody? Make sense? Now I need to understand why less cars are using it. Okay, any speculations, by the way? Why not many cars are using it? What could be the reason? Maybe they don't know it's there, but you can see the device, okay? Time. Maybe it takes too long. Remember, we're talking about convenience wash. Time is essential here. Okay? What can be another option, another reason? Expectation, right? Quality, in other words. Maybe the quality is not as good. These are the things I need to start, ask, and see. Maybe what can I do about the time? What can I do about the quality? Not to try and develop a new machine that will try to compete with the dedicated facilities. You can never do that. But think, how do I get the quality to be consistent? Hey, you said to us that at the beginning more cars used it and then it dropped. Make sense, everybody? A very different question. If I'm able to answer it, I can, 50% more cars, double the number of cars that are using the machine, I double the returns to my customers. Maybe I can get something in return. Make sense, everybody? Very different question. I'll go back to this example and tell you what they have done later on in my presentation. Okay, I just use it as an example to show what does it mean to ask a different question. It's very, very important. That's the starting point of a practical innovation journey. Make sense, everybody? Let's see another example, which is as important. This company, and again, one of the customers we have, they make meat pastry. So this kind of pastry filled with meat, again, in Europe in this case. And this type of products are sold through retailers in the chilled product category. So like sandwiches that are wrapped in some vacuum package that you can, it can be on the shelf for even 3 months, okay? And then you can open it and then eat it chilled or put it in an oven for 20 minutes and then you get superior taste, etc. This company had a very, very strong brand, okay? Where they operate, doing very well. Until the retailers said, wow, that's an interesting product. I see that it's selling fairly well. Let us develop a private label product. You know what's a private label product, right? That's the brand that the retailers own. They basically said, let's have our own product. Why do we need an external supplier? Now, if they're doing a good job and the private label product is good, then you are in real problems as a brand, because right next to you on the shelf, there is a similar product that is much cheaper. Right, everybody? And that's what happened to them. So they were starting to lose sales to the private label product. As a result, obviously, they were under tremendous pressure to increase sales, short-term pressure, okay? I think it happens in your business also from time to time, right? So this pressure to increase sales, in their case, translated to the following actions. First, they said, okay, let's try to be more competitive with the private label product. We are losing sales. So they took actions to be more competitive. Like, for example, let's try to make the product cheaper. How did they try to make the product cheaper? They reduced the quantity of meat inside the pastry, which was the expensive ingredient. So let's try to make it with less meat inside. It's cheaper. I'll be able to compete. Also, maybe we'll extend the shelf life like the private label, so it can be on the shelf for a longer time, less obsolescence, less waste, by adding preservatives to the product. This translated, what did it do from the eyes of the consumer? Obviously, it translated to less product appeal, okay, less brand differentiation, sales dropped. They were now under even more pressure to increase sales. If I need to get sales fast, what do? You're managers of your companies, right? So what do we do when I have to get sales quickly? You don't say it. You don't say discounts. I wrote it, but really they called it promotion. We do promotions. It's a much nicer word, no? So let's do more promotions, or honestly, give discounts. Obviously, profitability now drops, right? When your profitability drops, now it's all about scale. I need more sales to get to my profit. And then you're in a vicious cycle. You see that? Now, why did I go in legs and talk about it? Because, and I think as experienced managers, you will immediately understand. There is something called red ocean. What is red ocean? Ocean is like the marketplace. When over time, markets get saturated, more and more competitors go into the game. And then the competition is so high, the marketplace, the ocean turns red. Why is it red? From blood of whom? You and your competitors, right? Everybody fight with each other. Now, that's nice in theory, but in reality, what happens? When you are in a red ocean, you are forced, it's not your fault, but you are forced to take actions that keeps you there. It's like a whirlpool. You try to swim out, and because you try to swim out, you're dragged in. Here are examples of actions that they have to take. If they don't take these actions, they're not going to survive the red ocean. But when they take it, it's a vicious cycle. It keeps them where they are. Everybody with me? And that's always the case. When you're pulled into a red ocean, you will find yourself in a vicious loop that you are forced to take actions, reduce OE, cut access capacity, reduce quality, give aggressive commitments that make the operations much more complicated, increase variety of products endlessly, launch new products all the time and put a lot of effort even though they don't make a big difference and cannibalize each other, give discounts, and I can go on and on. And you're doing it, and you have to do it, nobody's fault, but that keeps you where you are. Now, why do I stress it so much? My father loved the following statement. It's not his statement, but his quote, but he loved to say it. He said, when you are in a hole, first, stop digging. What does it mean? It means you're in a hole. First, understand what you have to stop doing. If you don't understand it, if you keep saying, nothing I can do, I have to do it, you will stay in the hole. Look at this. Yes, we understand you have to do it, but as long as you're doing it, you're in a hole and you will never win the race. You're trying to compete with private label products on his own ground and on his own turf, by his own rules. You will never beat him. Make sense, everybody? That's what you stop doing. The only way out is to really think, how do you come up with much higher value to the consumers? That's the only way out to your customers. Now break your head how to do it. That's your responsibility as managers. Make sense? And many times we tell companies, yes, you may think that you're under such short-term pressure, you're not ready for innovation. It's not your choice. If you're under short-term pressure, it means you're in a red ocean. The longer you wait, the more difficult it will be to climb out of the hole. Make sense? What they have done, I will explain in a moment. But again, when you're in a hole, stop digging. Before we go into the process itself, one more thing that is important to highlight. Steve Jobs said it very nicely. He said, innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. As I told you, ideas are never the constraint. And if you're trying to make something new for the sake of new, you'll come up with a very long list, like the car wash company, a very long list of things that can make the machines better. When you're working on many things in parallel, you devote less attention, less resources for each one of these ideas. And at the end of the day, at best, you'll get many incremental improvements. Make sense to you? You know, some people say, you know, innovation is risky. Let me just shoot to all directions. One of the bullets will hit. Okay? But also in reality, only in movies, when you go like that, you actually hit, right? It doesn't work. Okay, in TLC, we always say that at best, you have many incremental improvements. But the summation of the incremental improvements, this little improvement, plus this little improvement, plus this, plus the summation will not add up to a big improvement. It doesn't work like that. If the next iPhone will be 5% lighter, 5% longer battery life, 5% faster, it will not be wow. It doesn't add up. You really need to understand where is the major constraint, the major, in this case, the major value point, and that's where you need to focus. So a very important part of the process I'll show you today is not only how to come up with ideas, but also how to converge, how to select the right ones out of the many ideas you have. It's a process of expansion because you want creativity, you want everybody to say whatever they have in mind, and convergence. Focus on the few things that make sense. Expansion, convergence, expansion, convergence. And you will see it right now. This is the entire process. For each one of these steps, there are many tools that can guide you and your business development teams. Because of the context of this presentation, it's more like an exposure. I will focus more on these two first steps, just to give you some tools that you can start apply tomorrow, okay? And just give you a very quick overview of the other steps if we have time, because we're not here for a whole day, so let's do our best. So it starts with value proposition, okay, where we analyze and look for powerful ideas, design these ideas. I call them concepts because it couldn't be a product or a service or a business offering, you know. So design these ideas. Concept evaluation, that's where you converge. You decide, let's look at all the ideas we have and decide on the selected few. Then the next step is all about converting value to business. Okay, how do you design the right business model? How you design the right sales process to sell this new innovation to a customer? Business assessment, that's where you converge. You say, okay, I thought of many ways to do the business. Which one will give me the right, you know, targets I need to reach, profit, sales, etc. Execution plan, that's how you design the innovation development, allowing you to do many iterations. Okay, so now let's focus on the first steps, which are the starting point for the entire journey. So we talked, you know, a lot about getting more business, increasing demand. Obviously, you do it by giving more value to customers. But what is value? The traditional definition of value is the ratio between the benefits and the features of the product to the cost of the product. The more benefits, the less cost, the better the value. Agree? That's the traditional definition, but we have a problem with this definition, or my father didn't like this definition, because he said this definition, again, keeps you where you are. You are in the features to price game. You and your competitors only looking at your products and thinking of its features and how to make it cheaper, etc. That's not where you want to be when you talk about innovation. So he came up with a much stronger definition of value. He said value is created by removing a significant limitation for the customer in a way that was not possible before, and to the extent that no significant competitor can deliver for a while, because any competitive edge is temporary. Everybody with me? The main thing in this definition is the concept of limitation, removing a significant limitation for the customer. This is maybe the big difference between innovation and improvement. Improvement is giving customers more of what they already have, which is okay. That's an improvement up to a point. But that's not innovation. Innovation is giving customers possibilities, capabilities they did not have before, removing a limitation. Okay? Giving more of what they have, you know, like let's take emojis, okay? Emojis, when they were first invented, that was an innovation. It's a way to communicate emotions through text symbols. That's capabilities we did not have before. The Egyptians had it, but everybody with me? But now adding more emojis, that's not innovation. That's improvement up to a point again. That's giving more of what they have. They may like it, it's okay, but that's not what we call innovation. Okay, coming up with another type of yogurt. It's not innovation. Okay, I read a nice article in Wall Street Journal just this summer. They said that the number of yogurts in average supermarket in the US offers, you know how many? Anybody that did not hear me before? How many? 306 types of yogurts. Okay, 24 strawberry yogurts. From these 24, how many generate 90% of sales? Thank you for the yogurts, Henry. Strawberry yogurts. Okay. How many generate 90% of sales, do you know, from these 24 strawberry yogurts? 3. Adding more yogurt, giving more of what they already have, maybe an improvement. Make sense, everybody? Okay. But providing capabilities, possibilities they did not have before, that's the meaning of removing a limitation. Removing something that blocks them from getting what they did not have before. This is innovation. That's what we're looking for. Make sense? Okay. Before we proceed and understand more about limitation, I want you to understand some difficulties if you agree with what I said. You see, most of the limitations we have today, we don't regard them as a limitation. We don't. It's just the way we live. We don't know what we don't have, right? Possibilities we did not have before. We don't know what we don't have. When do we acknowledge it as a limitation? Only when somebody comes and offers a solution. Before FedEx came, nobody complained that they cannot ship their products in 24 hours across continents. It's just the way we live. Huge limitation, but it's just the way we live. Now, why is it important, this academic understanding? Because we now need to look for limitations of customers' limitations. But if we just go and ask them, what are your problems? You should do that, but they will not complain about many limitations that they have, and that if we can remove, it will be the breakthrough. You with me? Okay, we need more things than just thinking of talking to customers. Okay, which I will show you in a moment. Before we go there, let's see some examples just to be on the same page. Let's start with one of our customers, Omron Healthcare. They are almost $1 billion company. Their flag product they invented is blood pressure monitor device to use at home to measure your blood pressure. Okay, I'm not going to ask if you have it at home because then you'll have to reveal your age. But you know what I'm talking about? It made them a giant company. It means that this product gave exceptional value to customers. It means that it removed a significant limitation. What limitation it removed for customers? They need to go to the doctor. Okay, you don't need to go to the doctor to measure your blood pressure. Now, let's go back to what I just said. How many do you think many people used to complain that the only way to measure their blood pressure is to go to the doctor? No, it's just the way we live. Huge limitation. Make sense, everybody? Okay, let's take another example. IKEA, the largest furniture retail in the world. IKEA, IKEA you say in the US, sorry. The right word is IKEA, but that's fine. IKEA, sorry. What made them so big? What limitation they remove? Cost. That's absolutely right. I can get contemporary design furnitures for a reasonable price, affordable price. Absolutely right. That's what made them so big. Now they also remove more limitations with their technology of assemble it yourself. Okay, like you can see huge variety of furnitures and get them immediately. Just pick it from the store. Everybody with me? Very nice. I use this example because I want to show you sometimes in order to remove a customer limitation, you really need to defy the norms of the industry. That's the disruption that people talk about all the time. For example, in the case of IKEA, now look how brave they were. They said customers will agree to buy unassembled chairs as long as it's good quality and cheap. Everybody with me? Who would think that customers will agree to buy? If I will ask you, all of you, same price, assemble or unassemble, what would you prefer? Obviously. By the way, the nice story about IKEA is how did they come up with this idea? How reality forced them to think like that. It's a Swedish company. They were already very big in Sweden in the 70s. All about price, okay? This is the huge retail chain in Sweden offering good, affordable furnitures. But the problem that in the 70s, the labor cost in Sweden grew dramatically. So they could not sustain the price point. They had to look where to make the furniture elsewhere, not in Sweden. Okay, back then you didn't talk about Asia. So they said, okay, let's produce the furniture across the Baltic Sea. It's not so far, it's just from here to, I don't know, New York. And let's produce them in Poland. It's just across the Baltic Sea. Much cheaper labor cost. The problem is that Poland was part of the communist bloc, and IKEA is part of NATO. So, and there was a policy then that you are not allowed to export finished goods from communist bloc to NATO countries. Finished goods. Okay, you're not allowed. What did they say? It's not, it's parts. But now if I make it as a kit and I need to assemble it for the customer in Sweden, I brought back the labor cost. So let's try and do it in a way that the customer will assemble it with the flat pack, so I can ship it much cheaper, etc. Make sense, everybody? Last example, Google. All of us are using this product, I assume. As internet users, what limitation it removes for us? What made them so big? To what? Access to information. Absolutely right. But this is not how they make money, right? None of you is paying Google, right? So how do they make money? Advertisements, which means they also give a lot of value to advertisers, to the company that make ads, right? What limitations they remove for advertisers? Access to your target audience, not just to the masses. Somebody will look for bicycle, I will show you your ad, your ad. Everybody with me? 2020, what was the revenue of Google from ads? Just ads, okay, not the cloud services they offer and all of that. Just from ads, what was Google revenue in 2020? Any idea? Just throw a number. 10 billion, wow, you're not exaggerating. 146 billion. Well, it's worth it if you can remove a significant limitation. Okay, I'm not going to go over the other examples. Let's move on. The question is now, to make it practical, how do I find limitations, okay, of my customers that I can remove in a way that was not possible before? We use a process that we call I for value. And that's something you can start applying tomorrow. Okay, I'll first give an overview of the different ways that we use in order to come up with, to identify customers' limitations, and then we'll go one by one with examples, okay? The sequence here is very important, and I encourage you to follow this sequence. You always start with the customer eyes. What is customer eyes? You look at your different customers, and you map the undesirable effects, the pain points, what they complain about, what they suffer from, and you think how to remove them. Minus, minus, removing a problem is a plus, okay? You always start with this method because it's the most intuitive one. People love to complain. There is a joke in Israel, I don't know if in the US it's the same, but the joke is why the Israeli child only starts to talk when he was 3 years old. Because until then he had nothing to complain about. Okay, so we like to complain. So let's start with where our intuition is the strongest to make it practical. Now, I'll show you in a moment how we do it. Before that, let's just do the overview. The next step is to dive a little bit deeper. That's the method that we use to find limitations that customers will not necessarily complain about. Okay? We're looking here for unfulfilled needs of customers, needs that customers have that we can help them fulfill to a much greater extent that they never thought is possible. Okay? Plus, plus, enhancing a need. Okay, we'll show you how we do it in a moment. I'll show you. The last method, we call it the product eye. That's where you look at your current products or services. You look at all the parameters, the key parameters that have to do with these products, and you start to play with it. What if it's much bigger, stronger, different materials, okay, lighter, heavier, whatever are the parameters that has to do with your product. And we'll see if it makes a wow. What if we can add a parameter that they didn't have before? What if we remove a parameter? Okay, everybody with me? Why we do it last? Because here there is a big risk that you will fall into the price to features game. Because you look at what you already have, you will fall again into small incremental improvements, thinking it will be a big wow. So you play with this only after you have a very good understanding of customers' problems and customers' needs. Now let's go one by one and make it more practical. Let's start with the minus. So first of all, you make a map of your key customers, okay? The different customers that you serve. Then for each one, list the major undesirable effects that these customers have. Look for one which is very meaningful for the customer, not for you, but for the customer. Sometimes when we make the list of undesirable effects of the problems, we start to see that they are interconnected. So that one is causing the other. So we're looking for one that is at the base, that is causing all the others. And then we know if we focus there, we'll remove many other pain points for the customer. Of course, you can do it for the customer or the customer's customer. Solving the problem of the customer can also give value for your customer. Let me give you some examples quickly. PayPal, start with the easiest one. Fear of fraud, right? Now let's jump to the car wash company. Remember the car wash company? Okay, so there are two customer types they focused on, the gas stations and the car owner. List of UDIs. UDIs is undesirable effects. There is a decline in the number of washes in the gas station, low usage rate. Car washes are not making good business for the gas station. There are some periods of non-service. Okay, that's what the company wrote. By the way, you do this analysis in a room exactly like this one. Why it's good? It doesn't have windows. I don't need you to go and do another market survey. Please don't. You already know enough. Of course, whatever you do, you need to later to validate. But let's make it practical. It's not the first time you engage with your customers. Everybody with me? We believe in surveys only in order to validate or disprove something you think about. Now, when you do the survey, you may find out new things you never thought about. But if I go and bother to do a survey, let's just first think on our own what we want to validate and check, and then go and check it. Make sense, everybody? Or in other words, a scientist doesn't go to a lab and say, let me just start mixing stuff and see what happens. It doesn't work like that. He has a theory, a hypothesis, and then he goes and check it. And then when you start mixing stuff to check it, he may find out suddenly plastic, you know, the new thing that you never thought is going to happen. Okay. Car owner. The equipment wash quality at time is below standard, and the time to wash the car is too long. Everybody with me? When just a point of clarity, the time to wash the car, I'm not talking about the time that the car spends inside the machine, because apparently in Europe, if you want to wash your car, you need to, after you fuel it, for example, you need to park your car, go to the convenience store, stand in line, buy a token, go back to your car, take it to the equipment, put the token in the machine, and then wash your car. Okay, so it's like really cycle time. Everybody with me? Okay. Now, one option is you look at these undesirable effects and say which ones I want to focus on, and I know that if I will remove them, it will be a wow. Perfect, no problem, we can do that. Another option is to say, well, I see there's already interconnections here, one leads to another. Let me do some analysis to see how they are all interconnected. In this case, we saw very quickly that these point to a vicious cycle. Let's see the vicious cycle. Car wash experience deteriorates. We said longer time to wash the car, poor quality of wash, and periods of non-service. This leads to the less cars are using the machine, which translates to the machine not making good business to the gas station. So the gas station is not giving attention and resources to really operate this business. Anyhow, it's not their main business. Okay, there is gas, convenience store, and car wash in terms of the level of business it generates. Everybody with me? So for this reason, for example, they say, I'm not going to put a dedicated person next to the machine to collect money. Why would I put this cost? If they want to wash the car, go to the convenience store, buy a token. And who is maintaining the machine? Like replacing the soap in the machine? Who do you think? It's the same person that runs the convenience store. Not exactly a sophisticated operator, right? So that's why the machine is not maintained well. And when the machine stops working, who's responsible to call the car wash company and say, hey, come and fix it? It's the same guy that operates the convenience store. You think that he rushes and does it? No. And that's why this leads to this. Like I remember still the CEO of the car wash company telling me, our customers are so nice, this gas station. We saw very often that the machine did not work for 3 months until they called us. And I'm hearing it and I go like, unbelievable. How can you tolerate such a thing? It's not their problem, it's your problem that the machine is not working for 3 months. Make sense, everybody? Okay, now we see this analysis. We want to get more cars to use the machine. That's the question we ask. Where do we need to focus? Very clear. That's the limitation we need to remove in a way that was not possible before. Everybody with me? What I have done to remove it, I'll share with you in a moment, because remember, where are we now? We are in the step of finding the limitation, not yet designing the idea. Just finding the limitation that we know that if we're able to remove, we have a wow. Everybody with me? Now, in reality, when we do this process, most of the time, 90% of the time, when I find the limitation, I already have some solutions in my mind of how to remove it. That it comes like a pair. And then as a facilitator, my recommendation is don't lose this intuition, write your idea. Okay, very good. The next phase, we will work more on these ideas and make sure that we are really removing the limitation, okay? But really in this phase, we just look about finding the limitation. If you already have some thoughts how to remove it, you write it down and you work on it at the next phase, in the concept design phase. You with me? Okay, but here, we're not really in a workshop, so I can delay how they remove it, and we'll talk about it when I reach the next phase. Fine? Good. Let me share with you another example. A company that have a strong brand in fashion jewelry. They sell their jewelry not at their own stores, but they sell it through mom and pop stores in the US, small neighborhood jewelry stores. Now, these are fashion jewelry, diamonds, etc., high-end kind of stuff, very expensive. What I will show you today, now, I'll show you already the solution they came up with. Okay, the solution they came up with is a new way of doing business with the stores, with the jewelry stores. Okay, and I'm going to show you, if you remember the process here, there is a step here that says buying process design. I told you when I presented it, I said, here you're working on the sales process, how you sell the product, your new innovation to the customer, right? I'll show you the deliverable of this step. In other words, the presentation that the salespeople of this jewelry company, the presentation they use in order to sell their new innovation to the store owner. Okay? Let's see it. Done. Okay, the name of the jewelry company is Sherry Dory. Again, that's the presentation they use in order to sell it to the store owner. They say, hey, we came to show you today a new way of doing business that we propose so that you and us can sell much more tomorrow while taking much less risks than we used to take. Let's see how. We designed this new way of doing business based on our understanding of the industry, how the industry works. To sell more, the store needs to hold more inventory. Okay, I don't know a retailer that will not agree. Okay, always they say, okay, we need more offering. The more inventory the store has, the more dead stock it has. What is dead stock? Something that is not moving. You need to understand, we talk about jewelry. It's not a fast-moving good, a consumer good. Okay, it doesn't sell so fast. 30% of the inventory is over 1 year old in the store. Okay, the more I have, the more dead stock it has. The dead stock blocks the potential sales of new and fresh items. Why it blocks? Because you don't have the budget to buy new stuff. Dead stock creates pressure on cash flow. If you notice, why am I showing you today? This is like the list of the undesirable effects that they wrote when they have done the minus. Everybody? Now, to ease the dead stock problem, some suppliers offer to replace old items. But now let's see how it works. In the jewelry industry, you don't talk to the vendor every day. You meet him at the trade show in Las Vegas, where he shows you all the portfolio and you make your order. And typically they meet twice a year in trade shows. So let's say you meet me in a trade show in January, you make your order, you receive the order in March. In June, we meet again, but it's only 3 months since you got it. So even if you have things you didn't sell, you won't ask to replace it. You will ask to replace it only next January when you meet again. And it's replaced only in March when you get the new merchandise. Everybody with me? By the time the item is replaced, a whole year has passed and the sales opportunity was missed. If nobody even looked at it for 4 months, why do you have to hold it for a year? You think suddenly somebody will come and buy it? That's how you have 30% of your inventory more than a year old. So here's a new proposition. You can replace any item any day without the need to provide any explanation. How do you like it? No question, just come and replace, no problem. More than that, you're very busy, you have a store to manage. We will help you. We will come and tell you, you're holding this necklace for 6 months, you're not selling it. If you want, your choice. If you want, look at our warehouse, you can replace it for the equivalent budget, different necklace or earrings or several earrings, whatever you want. Replace, we want you to sell. Let's see the entire offer so you also know what Sherry Dory is getting out of this. You gain access to the whole Sherry Dory multi-million-dollar inventory. You can replace any item any day as long as we have it in stock. Okay, so we're not going to produce it for you, but if we have it in stock, from whatever we have in stock, you can replace. What do we ask in return? In return, we ask you to always hold a constant amount of inventory, of our inventory at your store. So for example, if you ordered, let's say $50,000 worth of merchandise from us, you need to always have merchandise of our brand worth $50,000 in your store, which means if you're selling an item, you don't wait for us to meet us again in the trade show. You need to immediately reorder from us an item instead. Everybody with me? And from whatever you order, no dead stock, you can replace. Now, you may have cash flow issues. You just sold a necklace. You say, I don't want to reorder. I finally have the cash. I need it for other things. Don't worry. Reorder items are on us. You don't pay for the reorder item until you sell it or at the end of the year after Christmas, you had enough cash, whatever comes first. Everybody with me? What do you think is the store reply? Where do I sign? Okay, let's see the benefits. Current practice, to sell more, you need more inventory. Sell more with constant amount of inventory. At best, dead stock items are removed after a year. You can remove them as the moment you identify them as a slow mover by replacing. Dead stock creates pressure on cash flow, no dead stock. Showcase a fragmented look. You want to show in your store a whole collection, the earrings, the rings, the bracelet, the necklace. But many times you say the necklace is too expensive. I'm not sure I can sell it, so I'm not going to order it. And then you have a fragmented look, not the whole collection. Here, there's no risk. Get a whole collection, whatever you don't sell, replace. Make sense? 1 inventory cycle, 2 to 3 inventory cycles. Fantastic offer. Now, you're business people. You see this offer. I assume you understand why it's very good for the store. What is your question? Cherry Dory. It's more than what do they get. What they get out of it is quite easy to understand. You need to reorder, right? So they get continuous stream of income all the time. They don't rely on trade shows, etc. But what is the question? I understand what they get out of it, but they're taking huge risks. What are you telling Rami? They're collecting the slow-moving items back. Are they crazy? It's like they're making a suicide. You understand my point? For this reason, no competitor has ever copied them, even though this offer tripled sales in 2 years. Tripled. You know which years were that? That's why I can share. It happened a long time ago. It was 2008, 2009. The worst years. Triple sales. But now let me tell you why the risks are not as high. It's only in our imagination. I'll explain. First of all, the risks are limited to what you have in the warehouse. Because remember, I told you, you can replace only from what you have in the warehouse. Remember? So let's say you decided to put $1 million worth of inventory in the warehouse. That's your investment. In fashion industry, usually you don't have inventory. I mean, the stores have inventory, not the supplier, because it's so expensive. If I make it, let me put it in the store. So if you want, that's a competition barrier. What I have in a warehouse, but I keep it in a warehouse in order to enable the replacement. Now, next thing you need to know that the diversity is very, very high. A slow mover in one store can be a bestseller in another store. We saw, because we have statistics, right? I'm Cherry Dory. We can see the performance in many, many stores. So we know, we do the analysis, that only 15% of slow-moving items are absolute slow-moving. No matter where you put them, they won't sell. 30% of slow-moving items are bestsellers in other places. So replacement, no problem. And the worst case, it's jewelry. Worst case, whatever I have in the warehouse that is not moving, I can melt it. It's not gone for it. It's just a melting loss that I incur. 5%, 3%.